around in Calgary here. The Blackfoot people, my wife's people, the government of Alberta and the government of Canada did not let the Blackfoot know, who are further east, about 70 miles. They did not let them know they were opening the dams and the weirs upriver. And the Blackfoot, they said, it was like a train, the noise, and they only had minutes to get out of their homes. A lot of them didn't even have time to grab their wallets or their purses. So this, how you say, this disengagement from home is gotta be horrific. And because our home are special, us Indian people, because we live one place all our life. We don't move around like you guys. We have the home and we stay there from birth to death. So I can only imagine, because we're poor people. And so that's what I wanted to say. And you can't rush God. I was told you only got 2 minutes. How can you say a prayer in 2 minutes? So I'm taking my time. You got all the knowledge to edit after I pray. If you want 2 minutes, go ahead. So I asked Creator, I'm Dene. We're Plains Dene. We're the only Plains Dene other than the Apaches of Oklahoma. There's only 2 of us that are Plains Dene. So I asked Creator to give His love, His unconditional love to these people that are homeless, that have nowhere to go and can only think of their home. They're going to go home. Maybe they got no home. Nothing. They just left. So it must be so devastating. And so I'm going to pray. I'll do a short prayer. I'm going to pray for them, for our people, the Dene people, that are mostly affected because that's their land. And so that's how I pray. I don't hold back the truth because I'm really, in my heart, I feel for them. Nata, is akolaka. Dene no wuna asit dena. Sa kemisitidene na akolaka. Adite kema takut dena siki yetita nehinis Adik nitsana ka kaskut ta kiminitana tlata. Kimisila dite di istakus ane kititsana kani tahata nata. Koko lena adik kusatlakata kimiti nisha adita istute atakitine nata. Adite kumanita kusa kustia kimayina akula nata. Nitsana ka kaskata kiminitana. Kimini e kuchatakus kima atakunisina. Bless all the people that are helping. Bless the Western Hotel, and all the hotels are putting up these people from the territories created. And I thank the Premier for being here to give some condolences, some hope, and some encouragement to these people some who have lost everything, Father. I ask this in Jesus' name, and all the good spirits that you lend to our people, the indigenous people. Thank you, Creator. Shed your love upon them. They need every minute of your kindness and your love today. Thank you, Father.
They're on and they're all loud.
Right, it was up, it was pretty good on my camera. So if it's good coming out of my camera, you know what I mean? Not much I can do. Okay. Yeah, I know. Okay, we'll keep an eye on us. Okay, bye.
But exactly. I'd like to be able to. Well, 65, like people stop for diets. Yeah, you're done in 5 years and you didn't like. You can't have enough reason to do things that's not
Thanks for your patience. As you can imagine, Premier Cochrane had a number of people wanting to speak with her as we were going through the building today. And thanks to all of you for joining us here today. I'd like to extend a special welcome to Premier Caroline Cochrane of Northwest Territories. With the wildfire situation in the territory and around Yellowknife is deeply concerning, and the reason she's here with us, I'm honored today to have the opportunity to stand alongside her. We've just had an opportunity to meet some residents of the Northwest Territories, I think mostly from outside of Yellowknife, but I think some of them were from within Yellowknife, who had to leave everything behind, as well as staff and volunteers who are doing everything that they can to offer support and reassurance. The true test of leadership comes in times of crisis, and since the evacuation, Premier Cochrane has continued to run her government despite the crisis they face. I commend her for her bravery, her dedication to her constituents, and her willingness to serve during this critically important time. I'd also like to thank Albertans for opening their homes and their businesses, and hearts to the neighbors up north. Over the past week, we've gained 21,576 temporary residents, and Albertans are very proud to help. I'd also like to thank everyone from the Calgary Emergency Management Agency for their tireless efforts in setting up and running this evacuation center, and for the support that they offer daily to the evacuees from Yellowknife. Alberta's healthcare system has assisted in the evacuation of 4 hospitals and is serving the healthcare needs of 4 acute care patients, 55 continuing care patients, 30 obstetrics patients, and 19 dialysis patients. And so to our frontline healthcare workers, thank you. I know that there is Jolene is here as well from the Indigenous Wellness Group, and she's fielding a lot of calls and questions and walk-ins from people who need additional support. We've also opened the doors of our correctional facilities to the temporary transfer of 85 inmates. And so I'd like to thank our law enforcement agencies for their work ensuring the safe and secure transfer of these inmates, and also thank all of those who assisted in providing housing, meals, water, gasoline, and other supports during an incredibly vulnerable time. A special thank you to Solzia and the Calgary Hotel Association for the support they have offered, and Sol is here as well, talking about all of the ways in which his hotel chain has offered support to residents. I'd also like to recognize that our neighbors to the west are also fighting devastating wildfires, and our hearts go out to those who've lost homes and businesses in the Kelowna and Shuswap areas. Our thanks go to first responders and firefighters working to save the community. We remain in close contact with the government of British Columbia and ready to stand and support them if it becomes necessary. I know that my Public Safety and Emergency Services Minister, Mike Ellis, he's been on the phone troubleshooting on things through each stop that we've made along the way as we visited the different centers here today, and he stands ready also to help in the event that the call comes in from British Columbia. But now I'm pleased to invite Premier Cochrane to share an update.
Thank you. I want to extend, it's really tough what the residents of the Northwest Territories are going through. 68% of our population has been evacuated. Many of the people in the north have never left the north. They're not familiar with big cities. I know it's a struggle, but I can't express how thankful I am to Premier Smith, to the government, to the Alberta, for firefighters, for evacuation centers, for supports, and the people of Alberta. Myself, I had to evacuate as well, and the amount of people that were standing on the roads, giving out gift cards, opening their homes, handing out water and things. I can't express how much gratitude and how much it meant to us. I don't know how long this evacuation is going to take place. I know it's still very high risk in the north, but I can't say how much. My family is from Alberta. My mother's family is from Paddle Prairie, a Métis settlement, and I've always had an attachment. But now with what the Albertans have done for our people, I am eternally grateful. I shall never forget the kindness and the support of Albertans. You've truly shown what it means to care for people, not just your own, but for all people. And that is the Canadian way. So thank you so much.
And now we'll go into the media Q&A. Sorry for the delay today, folks. I'm sure you can all understand these are very challenging times for a lot of people. We'll just have time for a few questions today. We're going to start off with a couple from in the room. There's a mic at the back or right if you'd like to make your way there. And then we'll also go to the phone lines to take a couple questions there. And we'll be going with one question, one follow-up. Gentleman at the mic, feel free.
Hi, it's Aaron Collins with CBC National News. I have one question for each of the premiers, so I guess I'll consider that my question and my follow-up. First one is for Premier Cochrane. This morning on CBC's The Current, you mentioned that the federal government needs to do more to support northern infrastructure, and that northern communities need the help and support infrastructure-wise that southern communities already have. So given the unprecedented nature of this year's wildfire season and how many think that it's driven by climate change, I'm curious if you think climate mitigation infrastructure is an important part of that moving forward.
I can tell you that we've been facing issues with climate issues for a while. Our permafrost is melting, the Arctic Sea is melting, we have more ships coming in. These fires, I would love to say it was a one-time event, but I can't guarantee that. What I can say is that when we had to evacuate, not only me, we've been asking for the same infrastructure, roads, communications, that people in Canada take for granted for decades. When our community of Hay River started on fire, people were driving through our one road out with fire on both sides. The smoke was overcome, our communications went down. We have no redundancy. I couldn't get a hold of people. They couldn't know if they were safe, if they were evacuated or not. So I've been screaming for infrastructure for decades, all of us. Now we're talking about risks. 22 of our communities have no roads in, no permanent roads. And we all know if the smoke is there, you can't fly planes in. So if this happens, our season's not done, but if this happens next year, is it my fault? Whose fault is it when we can't get people out because we don't have basic infrastructure that every Canadian takes for granted? So I'm tired. I've been tired for a long time for asking for infrastructure, and now I'm angry. And I think that I'm not going to be able to do it alone. We've been arguing. I need every single Canadian to say it is not okay that the territories live like third world countries, that we do not have the same services that people in the South have. So please, everyone raise your voice, because I need the federal government here. We are Canadians, and we deserve the same. Thank you.
So kind of a related question, Premier Smith, as your colleague has pointed out there, there's a strong possibility that these kind of climate-fueled forest fire events are likely to happen again. So you've rightly pointed out in the past that many of the fires in Canada this year were human-caused. But I'm wondering if you think, as most scientists do, that human-caused climate change has made those fires more extreme and intense this year. And if so, what do you think should be done about it as far as infrastructure, mitigation? What should we do?
Well, I mean, this is the reason why we have our emissions reduction and energy development plan that would have us be carbon neutral by 2050. We take this seriously, and we're working with the international community to make sure that we're mitigating risk on that front. Secondarily, though, I've got a fantastic Minister of Forestry and Parks who will be unrolling a plan for how we can build fire breaks around communities. We were able to successfully do that in the case of Grand Prairie and Little Smoky, and he's observed that when you build these fire breaks, when a fire is raging and it hits that break, it makes it easier for firefighters to be able to address it. I've been to Fox Lake, and they have a similar issue to what Premier Cochrane was talking about. One road in, and it's a dirt road, and they have to evacuate by barge, and it was pretty scary for that community also. So we have an obligation to assist in helping them to find an alternative access route. So those are a few of the things that we are working on. Yeah.
Just to be clear, there's two parts of that, so my apologies, but you do think that climate change has exacerbated the wildfire season this year?
Well, look, I mean, all I know is that we have had the worst fire season in our history. We have had terrible fire seasons in the past. There are some years we get lucky and we don't have any burn at all, and that has been the case in a couple of years in the last 5. But I've traveled all over this province, and there's a lot of drying territory. There's a lot of forested area, and there's an incredible amount of risk every single year. And so I think that we have to be prepared that this could become a regular event, and if it's a regular event, we have to make sure that we take all of the efforts that we can to mitigate with fire breaks, to reduce emissions as we're doing through our emissions reduction and energy development plan, and to ensure that we've got proper infrastructure so people feel safe when they need to evacuate.
Thank you. Thank you. And we'll go to our next question at the mic.
Hey, Tim Brooke with CTV. Both my questions are for you, Premier Smith. First of all, we're hearing some reports this morning that some residents going into hotels are being asked to report to an evacuation center because some of the accommodations are full, are booked up here. You mentioned wanting to help BC if it comes to that as well. How many more people are we prepared to take on, and how can we accommodate all of these people?
I might get Mike Ellis to talk about that. I'll have him come up.
So I apologize for not having the exact numbers, but I can tell you that Alberta Emergency Management Agency is working very closely with the British Columbia government in the event that they certainly would like folks to come over to Alberta. I know that we have been prepared or pre-preparing places such as Lethbridge and the Medicine Hat and other communities in southern Alberta to take on any evacuees from British Columbia. At this time, again, we talk to British Columbia on a regular basis. We're available, we're ready to help, but at this time they're not requiring that assistance. Now I will say this, from an assistance perspective, as provided, as I've been told through Minister Sajjan and the federal government, we have been providing water bombers, as an example, to make sure that we're assisting with their fire efforts out in British Columbia. And I know that, according to Minister Sajjan, Premier EB and folks within British Columbia are very appreciative of the support we're giving at this time. Thank you.
Thanks. And then my second question is about a group, I guess they're self-identifying as freedom fighters right now, protesters. There are a number of them in BC who don't want to leave evacuated communities. We're hearing of some in Northwest Territories as well. I would just like to know your thoughts on those freedom fighters, Premier Smith, and if you agree with what they're doing.
The people who should stay behind are the ones who can help with the firefight. I mean, we did have a number of people in Indigenous communities who are skilled firefighters who also asked to stay behind, and we were grateful to be able to work with them and integrate them into our firefighting efforts. But I must say, I wouldn't tempt nature on this. When these fires get rolling, they form a wall, and it's traumatizing to anybody who has had to escape that. So I think it's unwise to try to tempt fate that way. If they have legitimate skills and they're able to be worked into the firefighting efforts, that may be the exception I would put forward. But we've just seen some horrible situations here with Slave Lake, with Fort McMurray, in Hawaii with Lahaina. It seems the real danger is if the fire jumps into a city. At that point, it becomes very, very difficult to be able to manage it. And so we're hopeful that doesn't happen in too many more cases. But I'm of the view you should listen to officials when they tell you to evacuate.
Thanks.
Thank you. And we're going to go to the phone lines now. Operator, could you put through the...
Sam, let's just have the Premier respond to that one too.
Oh, sorry. Premier?
I just want to add to that, we are really emphasizing for if you're not an essential worker, if you're not helping with the fires, if you're not helping with the grocery store or gas station, please leave the N.W.T. Every single fire that we've had, there's always been people that stay behind, protecting their homes, protecting their communities, but they actually put not only themselves at risk, they're putting our firefighters at risk. And I've seen it over and over because we've had so many fires in the north. When the fire hits the community, our first responders and our firefighters stop fighting the fire because then they have to focus on protecting those people. And then we get in trouble because homes burnt. So really, if you care about your homes, if you care about your community, if you care about the people that are working day and night fighting these fires, please leave if you're not an essential worker. Because if you choose to stay there for your life, that's one issue. But you're putting people at risk, young firefighters that are young as my children. I've met many of them, and they are put at risk when you decide to stay. So if you're not an essential worker, please leave the community that's being evacuated. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier. It looks like we have time for just one last question, maybe two. We're going to go to the phones. Operator, could you put through our first caller, please?
Eric Valley, the next drum.
Good afternoon. My question is for either, I guess. We are being told that there are unhoused evacuees in Calgary who have been pushed out of their hotel rooms, and many are now roaming the streets. So I'm wondering if this can be, someone can confirm if this is absolutely the case, and what is being done to make sure these guys, the N.W.T. is keeping track of these gentlemen and women and making sure they're able to access the required services.
We were made aware that there are a couple of individuals who do fall into that category who had been kicked out of hotels because of disruption, but we don't want anyone to be on the street, and so there's a couple of options that they're looking for. One is to provide shelter space. That's one option that the emergency folks on staff here are directing some towards. And the other is that they're working on a sort of a group housing type of arrangement where they can be in a facility that is, as opposed to single rooms, a little bit more of an open area. As I understand it, they're in process of identifying that space, and that if you want to call 311 in Calgary, and get directed as an evacuee, that would be the way that they'd be able to get connected to those services. Mike may also have some additional comments on that.
Yeah, thank you. And the premiers and myself were just recently made aware of this as well, and we've already actioned making sure that the Hotel Association is fully aware of the issue, but also as well as Alberta Emergency Management. Nobody should be turned away. And as the Premier indicated, 311, in speaking with Calgary Emergency Management only moments ago, they've assured us that by calling 311, that they have the resources in place to make sure any individual who is certainly feeling vulnerable will have a place to go, whether it be a shelter or a temporary accommodation. Again, we are trying to do whatever we can, as the Premier Smith has stated, we will do whatever it takes to make sure that people are safe. Thank you.
Yeah, when I did come in, I did ask that. It was a concern that I had. I'm not going to generalize people. I know that sometimes people think it's they make assumptions on who gets kicked out of hotels and not. That's not the reality. Many people can get kicked out of hotels. I'm really glad that it was one of the first concerns that I asked about. I'm really glad that Alberta is stepping up, that they're looking at alternative accommodations. We can't, we've been stressing to our residents, most people in the Northwest Territories are very kind. We're very community-minded, we care about each other. But in every community, there's always issues. So my concern is that they wouldn't end up on the streets of Edmonton. It's hard here, many people have never been out of the territories, and to think that they're being put on the streets is scary. Scary for me as the Premier, must be petrifying for them. So I'm really glad to hear that the Alberta government has recognized that and that there will be alternatives. I'll be spreading it all over my media. Call 311 if you are in a situation. So again, thank you for recognizing the need and stepping up to address the need.
Thank you. And Eric, did you have a follow-up?
Okay, what happens for people who don't have access to phones? Are there a lot of payphones or things for people who can reach 311 still down in Calgary, or access to shelters?
In Alberta, we try to make it certainly resources accessible for folks. So I guess technically, if they do not have a cell phone, I'm certainly sure that if they were to contact, even if not recommending people go to the shelters, that they don't have to go, but I'm just saying that there are many ways to find a way to use a phone to contact 311. Certainly another number that we've made available, and I know I told this to Premier Cochrane, 310-4455 is another number. And of course, we have our mental health services that we provide in Alberta, which is 211, which has an absolute wonderful array of resources to help people who might be dealing with trauma, obviously as a result of being displaced out of their communities. But yeah, I mean, there's other ways. It could be as simple as stop a police officer and borrow a phone, quite frankly. I think there's always ways to use the phone in order to contact 311.
And I believe we've got 4 evacuation centers in Calgary, others in other jurisdictions, plus the Aboriginal Friendship Centers are another area providing support. Plus we have on staff, as I've mentioned here, AHS Indigenous Wellness. So if anyone is in that kind of distress, the information will be available through 311. There's lots of points of access for it.
Thank you. And with that, that'll wrap up our press conference.
Here?
Sorry?
There's one more person at the white mic, just last one.
Gotcha. Can we just go with one question for the sake of time, please? Thank you.
Megan Cobb with Global News. I just want to ask a question on behalf of an evacuee some of us were speaking with this morning. He evacuated Yellowknife. He's heard from reports from friends who are still in the area that have checked on his place that items have been stolen from his home. Just wondering what's being done in terms of security for those homes that are left unoccupied right now.
Well, I'll start by saying it's really inappropriate, on verging on disgusting. For people are hurting, people have lost things they're left behind, people that actually are looting. I can't say how much that hurts me. It's inappropriate. This is not the time. It's never the time. But do not prey on people that are so vulnerable. In the Northwest Territories right now, we have RCMP. We believe we've increased their support from the federal government in that area. We are monitoring Technology has changed and it's really helped. The amount of people in our capital city that have those cameras set up in their homes. People think they're knocking on the door, and as soon as they knock on the door and ring the bell, the RCMP are notified. People down here have that, not everyone, but technology is helping us, the RCMP are helping us, and please, if this is what you're doing as a resident, then it is totally inappropriate, and you need to look at yourself in the mirror. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. And no last comments there, so that will conclude today's press conference. Thank you everyone for joining us, and please feel free to reach out through the context on the media notice if your question wasn't able to be asked. Thank you.